Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Super-Fanta-Fi. This being a show where I talk about TV shows of the supernatural, fantasy, and or science fictional genre. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about the latest episode of Legacies. A lot of interesting things went down in this episode, so let's break it down. Well, first and foremost, we have everyone trying to inspire the muse powers that are inside of Cleo, but it seems like there's no clear method of activating it, and she kind of feels kind of disheartened because she's like, oh, maybe she doesn't really get to choose who she inspires, or she's like, maybe I'm the terrible muse. And I love that Jed is like, no, I was the one that was previously inspired by her, let me, and it's like, calm, and he's like, all right, he's like, got it, I know how we defeat Malinfor. It's basically we get a time-traveling monster and we go back in time before he was born. I don't know why everyone's looking at him like, oh, that's the dumbest idea, but it's like, it's not that dumb, you know? I mean, it was just interesting, but everyone's just like, oh, we thought you had a serious idea, Jay. I was like, that's not the terrible idea, but I guess it's like, that's, to everyone else it kind of was. But what was interesting though is, and I'm curious, what is the trigger to it? Because it seemed like, I think, basically you had Caleb trying to inspire her by flirting with her, and it's like, oh, if it takes Caleb's flirting to get her inspired, we're doomed, or whatever. Like, oh, his game to get her inspired, we're doomed. And Cleo laughed and turned to hope and inspired her. So I was like, maybe it's like moments of pure joy or something like that. Like, I mean, we still don't know the rules. That was never clarified, but the fact is, hope made her laugh and everything. It's like, maybe it's like, it has to be like genuine, pure emotion. So it had to be like, not kind of a forced thing. It's just kind of like, oh, in this moment she felt pure joy, and in that, it inspired. Because it was even something Alaric was kind of getting at, that maybe her inspiration relies in her doing something that she likes. Since it's like, oh, Jed has the right idea, and it's like, I do? Oh, it's like, no, not about the time-traveling monster, but for her to do something that inspires her. Maybe that will allow her to inspire other people. We never saw it, but Alaric's like, oh, you inspired me. I was like, I guess, but it's just like, it didn't have the same reaction as with Hope, and I'm wondering, is that just because Hope's a tribrid, so it worked a little different? Because the thing is, we never saw it with Jed like that. It's only in this moment her eyes went yellow, and it's like, maybe that was also to hide the fact is what her circumstances were, but it's like, this is our first time seeing it, so if it happens more often. But I was just like, we didn't see anything reaction from Jed, and we didn't see any reaction from Alaric, you know. So it seems like it's just kind of it's a one-sided thing of she's inspired and her muse powers kind of pass on to you, but there's no oh, your eyes glow as well type of thing. But Hope has an idea that, you know, it's like, oh, her and Landon are going to go do some research. But then Alaric's like, oh, you inspired me. So it's like, because he ended up, I forgot what, oh, right. Because basically, I think it was because of their tie to Triad, it's like, well, the fact of the matter is, he wanted to go back to, the last base of theirs that he was aware of, and, because we haven't seen or dealt with Triad since season 1, right? Wasn't that the last time? Because MG's mom is connected to them. That's the last time we saw them, right? Did they pop up in season 2? I don't remember. I really don't remember. Nevertheless, Cleo, Alaric, and Caleb go check that out. But let's focus on the... well, for one, the school situation. The fact is that, Joji shows up looking for Lizzie, but then it's like, whoa, where is everyone? Runs into a knight. I was like, the moment the knight was there, I was like, that's got to be Wade. And lo and behold, it is Wade. And it's like, oh yeah, he's defending this school while everyone's kind of away. And even him asking Josie, it's like, whoa, do you LARP? And she's like, oh, nope, but this is exactly what I need, and got the crystal. I guess she didn't know 100% how the crystal worked, because it's like, oh, the person you want to talk to, you talk to him, but it's like, it doesn't always manifest itself the way you think it will, because Hope's interacted with it plenty of times because she's always talked to Landon through it. But basically, it's your subconscious manifesting, and kind of not always who you want to talk to, but more so who you need to talk to, because your subconscious knows you better than you. It's oh, you think you need this thing, but no, in actuality, you want / need this. So she ends up wanting to talk to Lizzie, but ends up talking to Dark Josie. And it's like, oh, I've actually been here the entire time. I'm still inside you. I'm just kidding. I'm your subconscious. So, and obviously, Dark Josie can be mean. Once again, very different from the dynamic between Hope and fake Landon. Well, because that's her subconscious, so like Landon always kind of tells Hope how it is. Same thing for Dark Josie when it came to Josie, because it's like, you spent all this time talking about how good you are and how strong you are, but it's also like you're denying a part of yourself, because she was saying like you want to like have a happy life, but it's like you can never have a happy normal life, and it's like, oh, you think I'm doomed, like, because it's like she's asking why all her relationships end terribly, because as we've seen, not all her relationships have ended well. They've kind of, so, but Dark Josie's like, notice what I said. A normal, happy life. You're denying a part of yourself. Like, that's also a part of a relationship, kind of bringing all you are into it. And it's like, you want to live your life kind of like a normal, but it's like, you're not normal. You're a witch. And to be denying a part of yourself like that, because she has this fear inside of her that obviously, getting her magic back, she's afraid that once she gets her magic back, she's going to be corrupted. To be fair, the corruption came about because of complicated circumstances, because of Kai. That wasn't 100% on her. Like, she's not naturally evil. She's actually very good. She's always has been, but she's worried that, like, if her magic comes back to her, she's so worried that she's going to be consumed by it again. But her evil self had to tell her, like, because basically by denying her magic, she was basically letting the darkness win inside of her, because she was kind of just, it was so terrifying of just kind of what she had to do, and just kind of wanted to put it to rest, so she wanted to kind of just live a normal life, because it was easier than kind of confronting, like, taking the chance that, like, if I got my magic back, like, what I, could be. Like, she was just, afraid of what might come about, so it was easier just to kind of let her magic go, so. But obviously, it's like, of course, the episode is shaped in a way where she actually had to have her magic, because Hope and Landon went inside of the, they astral project into the prison world, because they're trying to, because they want to set up the whole deal with the necromancer, so that if they can strike a deal with him, that basically him kind of sever his side, because he's like the crux of that prison world. If they can have him kind of destroy that link, they can destroy the prison world along with Malivore. And but obviously it's like, no, I'm not going to actually help him. I'm going to kind of screw him over. So, and obviously when they show up there, Landon's like, talking like the necromancer would. And lo and behold, by the time they try to track down the necromancer, he's actually dead. He's been ripped to pieces. It's like, oh, cool. So did Malivore do that or something else? And it turns out it's another creature. And even Landon's at first like, can this thing see us? I was wondering if it was because it ate the necromancer, that maybe that's what because it ate the necromancer. I was wondering if that what gave it its ability, but it seems like it naturally has the ability to see through the different planes. And obviously it ends up attacking, and Hope kind of kills it for a bit, but then it bites her. And she's like, no, it's fine, because the moment I go back to the real world, I'll be fine. She boosts Landon out. Landon comes out, and it's like, oh, no, that's not the case, because this thing's infection goes across the planes of existence. So even though you were astral projecting, it infected you, and now you're infected in the real world. So they Josie and Landon go to the expert on this, and it's Wade. He goes based on his D&D campaign. It's like, it's like, oh, a tabletop game. It's like, no, it's like during a board game. It's like, I forgot what she was saying. She referenced something else, but he was like, it's actually a tabletop game. He's like, and now, I'll shut up while you guys like try to come up with something. But he was basing it on like, oh, well, what the D&D lore and stuff like that. So it's like, oh, so it's interesting. But then he also knows like, oh, but like from Filipino legend, it's kind of a thing of like, once this thing bites you, you transform into it. And we see, hey, Hope is transformed into one, which I even love later on. Landon's like, is it kind of wrong that I still find her attractive? But I like that they kind of like sprinkling in throughout the episode certain little hints about this whole situation. That for one, Wade brings up like, oh, like this like campaign thing, and Landon's like, what? Oh, oh yeah, sorry, I guess I forgot about it. And Wade was like, wait, what? You know, there's that. Then later on, there's the whole aspect of, well, someone's going to have to stab Hope because now that she has her magic back, Josie was able to kind of forge the weapon they need to turn her back, because if they don't turn her back in within an hour, she'll be stuck that way. Wade's like, basically because their hero, the school's number one hero, Hope, is kind of out of commission considering the circumstances. He's like, as the current defender of the school, I have to do it because we all care about Hope, you know, and what she means to us, so I have to do it. Landon takes the knife and stabs Hope. And then you have that look on Wade's face like, whoa, something's kind of off about that, you know. And I like how they handle that, especially when Wade brings it up later on, like, Hope, can we talk about Landon? And it's like, you know, it's like Landon's off. It's like, I brought up, yeah, the D&D thing. It was his favorite campaign module, and he forgot what it was. It's like, yeah, but also those things go after dead flesh, right? Which is why it ate the necromancer. Because at first I was like, did it bite the necromancer? And is that thing they ran into was actually the necromancer? But it's like, no, they infect living people to turn into one of them. It eats dead flesh. Necromancer's dead flesh. So it's like, so why was it going? It went after Landon specifically, and while you were transformed, you went after Landon specifically, but also what he did. She's like, yeah, he saved my life. I would do it in you know, under those circumstances. Yeah, but not Landon. Landon would never do anything that would ever lead to you getting hurt. Something's off here. And they both kind of look at him as he's kind of smiling and walking by. I was like, I knew it though. Like, I've been feeling it for a while that Landon's just been a little off. I don't know what it is. It's just his gut feeling. Just like someone like the way he's, because even Hope's like, oh yeah, he's been back and he's perfect. It's like, I don't know. He's like perfectly imperfect. It's like he's trying, like it just seems like he is perfect. And then he has moments where he tries to be imperfect to kind of seem like, I'm not like, he just seemed a little too perfect sometimes. And then there's also just, like I said, just moments where he just seems like he's trying, like, and rather than just kind of being his normal goofy self, it felt like he was trying to be his normal goofy self. It was just interesting. Like I said, I think I've got it, like that creature that's like went in there, cut Hope's hair, cut his. I think, once again, like I said, I think something or someone is impersonating Landon, and that Hunter or whatever is actually Landon, because we don't know how much time passed, because time works differently in that prison world compared to this, and they made a point to not show us everything that happened to Landon while he was stuck there. I'm sure an eventual episode will kind of clue us into everything that went down in that. But that's my current running theory. But obviously it's like, oh, the dead flesh thing. So it's like, because at first it's like, oh, maybe it's a phoenix thing. It's like, no, for one, he's not a phoenix anymore. But I guess the argument could be made, you know, on some level. But it's also like, if that were the case, it wouldn't eat him either, because they don't like fire. So it's like, the fact is he smells like dead flesh, meaning that Landon, maybe, oh God, I hope it's not depressing like that. That'd be super dark. Dude, if we went down the route of like, oh, that's representing the fact is that Landon's dead. So like, it might be a thing of like, he's dead, but his soul was put in a different body and something else possessed his body. Because that's the thing, and maybe it's kind of implying like it holds only a fraction of his knowledge up to a certain point, and then like maybe it only got what was super important, knowing like the general knowledge it needed, and like didn't have enough time to learn everything it needed. I don't know. The thing I'm worried about, and this is kind of spoilerish, I'm worried it might be a Haven situation. Season 3, which, if you aren't aware, my favorite season. The bolt gun killer, like, mystery, one of my favorite aspects of Season 3. That's why it's, like, my favorite mystery of, because it's such an interesting twist, and it just always keeps you on your toes. If you've seen Haven Season 3, you know what I'm talking about, where it's like, there's some bolt gun killer reveals, you're like, no! That it kind of breaks your heart in certain regards. I hope we don't have that type of thing of like, it might be implying like, oh, Landon's dead. Like, dead might be a little bit different circumstances depending on what the situation ends up being, but it still kind of hits you with like a, yeah, yikes type of thing. But we'll ultimately have to wait and see where things kind of go on that front. But that's fascinating. Obviously, now that her magic's back, you know, Josie is trying to decide, you know, she hasn't quite decided, like, I'm going to come back to the school yet. But for her, I think it is a process of finally kind of accepting herself as a whole. Like, because for a while now, she's been denying a part of herself. It's like her magic is a core part of herself. She's a witch, you know? So her magic has been a part of her since she was born, you know? So I guess you maybe make some argument. I'm like, oh, it's gone with you since you were in Joe's belly, the bio mom and everything. But nevertheless, I'm curious to see where things kind of go on that front, especially with her magic restored, her back at Mystic High. I mean, to be fair, you wouldn't be the first witch attending that school. So, but other than that, another angle to this is the Alaric, Cleo, and Caleb thing. And Caleb is spending the entire time, like, hitting on her. And she's like, well, the fact of the matter is, I'd rather not. And he's like, why? What do I have to do? And she's like, well, for one, stop trying to impress me. Stop trying to act cool and just be honest. Can you do that? And he can't say anything. And so, you know, Alaric is there to kind of help him and to be like, oh, like, girl trouble. He's like, I get it. But, like, you know, maybe you need to be honest about why you're here. And it's like, oh, because you like Cleo. Sure, yes, but are you sure there's not other reasons to it? And so later on, well, for one, we end up also finding out that the device that they're looking into is made by Da Vinci. Like, for what purposes? Well, we really didn't get into all of that because there was like the fire extinguishing stuff came out. Like, I just think it's interesting timing that you just had to be looking all that. Like, Alaric just kind of made it seem like, oh, it's just kind of an electrical mishap or something. Like, no, that seemed a little too, like, perfectly timed, and it just happened to ruin the thing you were looking at. So it gave you a clue of where to start next, but it would have been nice to just have it all kind of laid out for you. But for him, it's like, yeah, I don't really have that. My Italian is not that good. Which I love that, like, which is interesting because, like, in the, that box, he was like an Indiana Jones character, and obviously he's kind of nerding out about it. I mean, to be fair, you know, he is a teacher and everything. So, to be fair, like the Indiana Jones aspect, very, very true to his character, even more so, like, obviously him teaching at the Salvatore School and everything. Like, he definitely plays the role of, like, a Indiana Jones. But it was interesting that Caleb and Cleo had, like, a heart-to-heart moment where he was like, okay, you were right. Like, one of the reasons why I came along was also so that I could have your back in case any other Malivore monsters came after you. I could be there to protect you. And she's like, really? That's sweet. And he kind of opens up too of saying, like, being vulnerable isn't easy for me, because he's like, the last time I was vulnerable with someone, I ended up dead. And it's like, whoa. So someone he cared about, someone he got very close to and opened up about, led to him becoming a vampire. I was like, now that's fascinating. Because, like, I mean, because there's some of these characters, like Lizzie and Josie, we know kind of their story because we've for one, watched them grow up to a certain extent. Not all of their, you know, watched their growth, but obviously, like, we've been there since they were literally inside of Joe, like I said, Joe's belly. So, them, but it's like, MG, we've dived into his past a bit. Same thing, Caleb, we learned a little bit about his extended family, but his past is still an enigma, and I'm like, oh, this presents a really interesting thing. And hearing that about, like, right, that's how this person he was vulnerable with is why he became a vampire. And he's like, oh, it's a long story, maybe I'll tell you sometime. And she's like, oh, okay, cool, we can, you know, I have a free evening, so we can go on that date. And he's like, are you messing with me? She's like, no, I'm serious. And he's like, as she's walking away, he's like, yes. And it's like, Kalina starts like, oh, just like kind of the phlegm and stuff like that. So, you know, kind of cool that things kind of worked out. Because it is a thing that Caleb is always trying to act so, he's usually kind of cool. He's the cool guy at this school and everything. So he's always kind of presenting himself that way. So we don't really see him that vulnerable. I think the only time we really get to see that was like any time with MG, and obviously that's kind of a complicated thing because, oh, MG's got Ethan, and obviously that kind of hurts Caleb a little bit because it's like, right, I felt like I was kind of the only buddy he had, and like, oh, I didn't want, it's like, oh, he's kind of moved on and he's okay. And like, you know, I was like, all right, I guess because it, you know, once again, it makes Caleb feel like, oh, I thought we were kind of family, but I guess I'm not like that important if he's able to just kind of move on and just be fine without me, you know. It's like, oh, feeling needed, you know. We all kind of want to feel needed by somebody, you know. But so there's that development. Another angle to this is the whole situation with MG. He's kind of pushing Ethan away, still not giving him the full rundown of the entire supernatural world about, like, right, knowing all about Finch's situation and not, you know, and it's like, oh, Lizzie shows up because she followed them, and it's like, oh, like does Dad know you're playing superhero for human power? You're supposed to have wiped his memory. Finch wakes up. She's completely unaware of the supernatural world. She actually thought she was the only wolf, and then Lizzie's kind of immediately judging her by being like, oh, the fact is you have activated your curse, you're a killer. Which, to be fair, you could tell it comes from a place of being super protective of Josie, because this is someone she doesn't know. But it's like, I'm just like, some people at this school who got their curse, like, Jed's curse is activated, so it's like, people who've already got their curses activated. You never brought that up with Hope or Raphael, like, so why are you giving Finch so much guff about it? But it's because, like, oh, Finch is a person her sister's super into. Even she, like, the previous episode tried to help her sister kind of, lock that down. But still. So she keeps treating Finch like, oh, like, you're probably like a mass murderer or something like that, which is like, I just think it's so interesting that, like, she's just casting all these stones at Finch. So using his ability, MG's able to take him and got Lizzie inside of Finch's mind, and we see it's like, oh, this little girl is probably an innocent bystander that was killed by her. It's like, oh, this cute adorable little girl is Finch, and it's like, oh, this guy, oh, she must come in here to kill elderly or sick people. Nope, this is her dad. Basically, it's like, because it's like, I thought, why are we at this hospital? I thought this is supposed to be the first time she ever turned, and MG's like, it is. And so we find out the person she killed was her grandfather. It's like, we have a secret. The fact of the matter is, we don't see that too often now. Like, now I'm sitting here thinking about, like, werewolf families like that. We don't know about everyone else's circumstances, but it's not something that comes up too much. Obviously, like, the originals, it comes up, obviously, because you have, like, the werewolf families and stuff like that. Obviously, it comes up in the Vampire Diaries because Tyler's family had that lineage. His brother was a werewolf. He was a werewolf because it ran in their family. And just the Lockwoods in general, they kind of had that. But it's just interesting, like, bringing it full, like I said, because it's something they haven't really tackled, like, werewolf lineages. Like, well, we know Raphael's, I'm trying to remember. Is his mom one? I'm trying to remember. I don't remember. God, I should know, because that just came up, like, earlier this season, but I honestly don't remember. Regardless, tangents and all that aside, it's just not an element that comes up too much, is all I was getting at. Do correct me in the comments down below about some of the stuff, because I'm sure I'm having brain farts right now, so I'm sure I'm getting a lot of stuff wrong. But regardless, finding out, like, that's how her curse got activated, it's kind of sad that when I said her dad, but it could have been her grandfather, but I'm pretty sure that's her dad. It's like, it's kind of sad her dad put her in that position. Like, he must, well, for one, like, him doing that was because he's like, this way your curse gets activated, and, this way you also don't have to deal with the fact of, having to actually kill someone to activate your curse, but this way you have the strength to protect yourself, don't trust anybody. So I'm sure that's why, like, Finch kind of has, some trust issues. Maybe this also plays into what, that is also interesting too, because, like, she talks about it earlier in the season about, like, not being in a good place with her family. It's like, have they activated their curse? Like, Finch is kind of being away from her family, so it's probably like they could probably give her the lay of the lands about that. Once again, it also depends on, like, how many. It's a secret, and it's their secret, but it's like, who knows? I'm also curious, like, are they like a special bloodline of werewolves, wolves or not, or it's like they just, like, is there anything special about their family or not? Regardless. Now Finch is kind of upset because it's like, you made me remember, like, not only was it someone, like, me being a murderer and killing somebody, but who it was that I did. And it's like, you're a monster. And obviously, like, the sad thing is, and even MG says it later on, that, like, Lizzie, yes, she could be very overprotective when it comes to Josie. But the fact is, because there's also an angle of, like, you could also make the argument, it's like, right, Josie was kind of slipping further and further away from her already, and then you add in Finch, and that would have pull Josie that much further away. But it is a thing of, like, she's just overprotective. It's like, I can't keep an eye on her all the time. Plus, I actually try to get her to get super close to you. And obviously, my sister's really into you, so I don't want her to get hurt. So Lizzie's suggesting, like, because obviously for Finch, it's like, I'm going to have to remember all of this for the rest of my life. So so Lizzie's suggesting, like, there's the memory block. And obviously for Finch, it's like, I want to remember what my grandfather told me about not trusting anyone. Everything else can kind of get blocked away. And it's such a shame because I really liked Josie. They never actually showed us, like, her blocking her memories, but I'm assuming that just kind of happened in between scenes. And obviously, Lizzie feels so bad about it. And obviously, because she's kind of at a low point, she's also apologizing to MG about, siphoning him and just stealing the Ascendant from him. But it is a thing that, she's like, I'm not really the best person to, give advice and considering everything, but she's like, normally you're always the person who ends up doing the right thing. So she's like, can I ask you for your advice? Because he was trying to decide on how to handle the Ethan thing. It's like, I won't tell Dad, but maybe you should kind of be truthful. And he kind of turns that back to her to be truthful to Josie. It's like, Josie can handle it, like, she's strong, like, she can make the decision herself, but also, you're not a monster, you're protecting someone you love. Like, anyone would give anything to have someone like that to be one of those people. And, like, there's this moment, like, the way Lizzie's looking at him, because it's like, it isn't just like, I think she straight up loves MG, and it's like, and it's just like where they are, like, neither one of them can really say, because I think she feels like, considering what I did, I can't cross that line with you just because I've broken your trust, and you won't, she's probably also afraid, like, oh, you probably won't feel the same way about me, considering everything that's happened, and MG's just probably not in a place right now to open up to her, like, there being something between them. So that's where things end off. But I'm interested to see if at the end of the day whether Lizzie ends up telling Josie the truth next episode. Interesting timing, considering, like, oh yeah, Finch now knows the truth about her circumstances. Granted, now some of those memories are blocked. I'm assuming that's also blocked. Well, she needs to, now she also doesn't. I wonder, did they block out, like, most of the day? So, like, the fact is that MG and Lizzie, like, knowing about witches and stuff like that, but now, like, Josie has her powers back. I'm also curious if Lizzie's going to bring up the memory block thing. It's going to be interesting to see where all of this ends up taking us going forward into the next episode. But really, that's all I want to talk about. Till the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day, and goodbye.